Hello, friends. So I've been thinking that I should probably finish my Chosun army and that I should probably leave my room at some point. I can't just live off mochi. There's not enough ingredients in mochi to stay alive. But I've been busy with my samurai army for a time-sensitive event, and so I haven't actually had the time to work on my Korean units. And that is a shame. So instead, I can provide you with a broad army outline and general planning for the units that I intend to make. Now, why is this useful? Planning and preparation equals success. With enough adequate time and planning, you can influence the future direction and aesthetics of your units, and they usually come out more considered and therefore better. And so I think it's a very useful thing to do to look at the army outline. So let's go ahead and do that now. In the dark times of, just everything, do you read the news? The people seek a guiding light of hope. What should we do? What does this all mean? Well, as my local vending machine told me, and it is just the one, we have only one communicative vending machine, quote, "The joy of life does not lie in the giving of life, but in taking it," end quote. Just kidding. What the vending machine politically advocates for is the anarchist ideology of the joy of life, quote, "depends on us to automatically discover," end quote. What does that mean, vending machine? Is the joy of life automatic but also dependent on our individual search, which is automatically guaranteed to succeed? That's very optimistic, which is probably why the machine is so profitable. The vending machine is not wrong though. You have to discover your own joy and not give up on your life, which for me means making a Chosun Korean army in 1/72nd scale and mapping out the units by their own individual character while simultaneously unifying them by army themes. This is clearly a thing done for joy and is not motivated by profit. There is no conceivable professional advantage in making a Chosun army. You will never stunt on those hoes with a Chosun army. As Richard Yates once said, if you wanted to do something absolutely honest, something true, it always turned out to be a thing that had to be done alone. That just means no one cares. Forever alone. And that's what you're going to be with this army, because no one else is making one. They didn't call Chosun the Hermit Kingdom for nothing. They saw that shit going on with China and Japan and were like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm not dealing with that shit. That's too much drugs. There's a time and a place for opium. Well, maybe there's never a time and place for opium, but that's too much. No. Now, let's be honest. If you're trying to make a Chosun Korean army, or any Korean army on the tabletop, we're all splashing about in the same bathwater, and the tap does not work. It's a small circle of diehards that fervently refuse to do the popular thing and make like Romans or World War II stuff, either because they suffer from a David versus Goliath mentality, have a love of niche historical events and aesthetics, or are ethnically or culturally Korean. I think the first three are obvious. But what do I mean by culturally Korean in this politically fraught time? Well, to explain, I'm going to first bring up Japan. Because they're just better. I'm kidding. No, it's because they have the best public relations internationally. They may be winning the culture war, but they lost the Imjin war. Oh, you just got served about a conflict that happened like 500 years ago. Now, in the ever-shifting cultural sphere that is global influence, Japan won the PR wars in the East Asian realm. That should be obvious. I have a friend who is a true blue eyes white dragon, and in conversation one time, he looked at me dead in the eyes and he said, in his heart and soul, he feels Japanese.
I gonna be ninja. I gonna chop, chow down, take chow down to Chinatown.
Now, I'm interested when people say insane things to me. So I asked him why, and we examined the benefits of the country in comparison to other countries. And really, in the end, it just came down to Japan makes anime, and he likes anime. Now, for a person to shift their identity and physically relocate across an ocean because of cartoons, well, what can you say other than outstanding cultural victory, you know? His mother is inconsolable. That's what she told me last night. So anyways, about being culturally Korean. So Korea saw that and was like, hey, wait a minute. We can do this too. We can do anything. And provided subsidies and promotion for its K-pop and K-dramas. And now K-pop Demon Hunters is like the most watched thing on Netflix. It's pretty good. You should go see it. So maybe that transmits into historical wargaming by osmosis. I don't know. But I do think we're going to see the rise of Koreaboos that will rival the weeaboos. I'm calling it now. There will be a reckoning. Meanwhile, everyone hates China. The reasons of which are many and are beyond the scope of this video. Although maybe their soft power level will increase with products like Black Myth Wukong and other games. So I'm pretty happy with my general conception of my Chosun army. I've done some historical research and I found the cutting edge stuff, or as we say in street lingo, that good shit, is mostly on Twitter. The reason is books take time to research and create, and in the gestation process it can already be outdated when it's published. It's like reading print news rather than just going on a news website. Same principle. Now, there are active historical communities on Twitter. I refuse to call it X because the name is stupid. And this all happened before Elon Musk became a Nazi. So if you want to know why I'm using the Nazi website, it's because the armor communities are still there. It's not political. I'm just trying to stay updated on historical research because I want to be able to justify expelling minorities. That was a joke. Don't be mad. So I currently have 4 units painted and 3 figures of a handgunner unit. Why is progress so slow? Well, I had to paint a Sengoku period Japanese army for a multiplayer game, which is now done, and now I have more time to go to work and see other human beings. Meanwhile, my Chosun army is neglected, much like the actual Chosun army was before the Imjin War. So really, I'm just trying to juice more historical accuracy into my army. For real, for real. When I first started this army, I was resigned to scratch building many parts of the army and using red box models as a foundation. It makes sense because at that point, other than Perry Miniatures releasing models one time and Redbox making 5 units and then moving on forever, no one was really interested in making Chosun Koreans. A trend which has continued to this day with Korea's current birth rate. Then, out of nowhere, like a Korean Santa Claus, Wargames Atlantic has made a complete range of historically accurate troops. This is of course fantastic and good for general accessibility, so I don't have to scratch build and convert anymore. But I like doing it to give my models dynamism and little historical details and uniqueness. So the current plan is to pivot to using Wargames Atlantic models as a base, supplement with red box models for variety, and convert less, but still do touches here and there. My army follows the structure of the basic Impetus army list. So I currently have the Guard Cavalry unit done, a unit of melee militia, a unit of regular foot, and a unit of regular archers. However, I've been rethinking my army a little. When I was making it, I've publicly acknowledged the whole time that I know the fish scale armor on my Guard Cavalry commander is historically inaccurate, but I included it because it is so iconic. It's just so late Chosun, and it's currently mid Chosun summer. I've recently decided to make a late Chosun army too, probably based around the wars against the Qing dynasty. So that means it would make sense to use fish scale armor for the commander of that army. So I'm currently thinking of just breaking this unit apart and distributing the figures across both armies. Part of the decision making is driven by Wargames Atlantic. It's not like they came to my house and tried to blackmail me, although I'm not against that. I live in... It's more that they released a mid-Chosun king in lamellar armor, and it's fantastic and historically accurate. And recently, they made some late Chosun matchlock figures, so I just have more reasons to replace my current mid-Chosun cavalry commander and start a late Chosun army. I've also been thinking of using the normal version of the basic Impetus army list, rather than the variant. I chose the variant army list originally because it swaps out a unit of regular foot, archers and artillery with a unit of dual-wielding swordsmen and 2 units of militia. This is based on a cool and historical technique the Chosun Koreans had of dual-wielding swords, and they even did it on horseback. Very cool. It was definitely very rare as well. They wouldn't actually form a unit of people like this, because how would you get enough people? And how would fighting in a formation like this be practical? But it is really cool. The thing is, I wanted to use the variant list because I wanted to have more melee infantry units, and because I didn't want to freehand more Chosun shields. I conceive of my regular foot units as the front line of a Tong level formation, so that would be shield bearers. And until recently, no one made Chosun shields, and I thought I would have to freehand them. I already freehanded 3 of them, and the effort nearly made me give up on collecting the army. I suppose this is what parents feel like when they have a child by accident. I literally pivoted to the variant army list to avoid painting more shields. However, Wargames Atlantic has once again become the solution by making raised detail Chosun shields. So yeah, I want to use those models. Losing 2 units of militia for archers and artillery ultimately fits in the playstyle and theming of the Koreans better because the mid-Chosun dynasty was known for its love of archery and was never renowned for close quarters combat. So having more ranged units captures the historical essence of the army better, and I'm willing to forego having more melee infantry units because of this. So I guess I'm going to convert my existing militia unit, which doesn't exist in the normal version of the list, into skirmisher archers. Now, I don't know how I'll do it yet. I'll probably just stick bow bags and quivers on them and call it a day. So they will be archers, charging into close combat in a dire situation, which is fine. So if I pivot to the normal list, this still leaves 2 units of light cavalry, a unit of regular foot, a unit of crossbowmen, which I'm going to represent as archers, foot with rockets, so handgunners, and a unit of artillery. It also leaves a unit of guard cavalry if I'm dismantling my current unit, but I don't have to, but I probably will. I've already revised most of my units in my army before to make them more historically accurate, so I'm happy to just do it again. I will proceed in the order that I believe I will make the units. My next unit will be a handgunner unit. Now, historically, at the beginning of the Imjin War, Chongtong handguns were used as part of a layered infantry formation, as part of the standard organizational grouping of the Tong size, which went shield bearers first, then handgunners, then spearmen, then glaive wielders or archers, or then archers or glaive wielders at the rear. So having a unit of handgunners just by themselves isn't really the way the historical army fought, but in the abstraction of a game setting, I'm happy to represent the unit as one line of handgunners in a broader Tong formation. According to the Jinju Museum, Chongtong handguns actually had a longer effective range than Japanese Teppo and a faster reload time, but their accuracy was far worse, which the Koreans compensated with by putting in multiple projectiles for a single shot, as if firing a blunderbuss. The front row of my figures are already decided. They're basically firing their handguns. I need to make a final member of the front rank, and Wargames Atlantic recently released a Brigandine handgun unit, which has a kneeling figure. So I think using this figure would give my unit a lot of variety, and I want to convert him so he's holding a Pavis shield with one hand and aiming a handgun with his other arm. It's a cool pose idea, I think. I want the back row to be reloading because Wargames Atlantic has models that feature the whole process of reloading, which is pretty neat. However, these sculpts are either armored in Lamela or Brigandine, and painting Lamela is really hard, and I don't want to undergo the emotional damage of painting the cords on the lames for such a low tier unit. The thing with Lamela is you can't really just use washes on it because it doesn't have crevices for liquids to naturally settle in. Instead, it has tiny, tiny raised rope textures. Can you dry brush over them? In my experience, the only thing that works is manually picking each string out, at least in 1/72nd scale. So I genuinely believe that maybe, other than samurai armor where the cords are differently colored to form patterns, Lamela armor is the hardest armor to paint in miniature form. Warhammer tried to adapt Chinese armor styles, which Korean armors are very similar to, saw Lamela designs and were like, no, we can't do that. We'll make the kids cry. Well, cry about something other than the prices. I guess I can justify one Brigandine back ranker, one Lamela vest back ranker, and I'll convert a chainmail guy and a paper armor guy and add unarmored arms from the Lamela handgun set. I'm currently thinking that rather than green stuffing handgun accessories onto a paper armored figure, I might just convert paper armor onto a Lamela figure for variety. Paper armor is pretty easy to sculpt. I've done it in the past several times. The unit after that will probably be light cavalry to take a break from foot units. I want to create the red-robed general, Kwak Che-u, as he was an iconic figure known for wearing red robes. Now, he was known to use a strategy to cause confusion by dressing his men in the same red robes and give them white horses, which was similar to the white horse that he also rode. So I want to recreate that, but there are aesthetic considerations such as, does he just wear the robe? Or does he have armor on top of the robe? One interpretation could be he wore armor underneath the robe. In the Nanchun Cha look, he was recorded as wearing red robes and a hat with the decorations of a high-ranking official. So that's how I'm going to portray him. He was known for having a choleric temper after trying to execute officials who ran, so I think he should be posed aggressively. Because I want his unit to resemble him, to depict his famous tactics of deception, the horses should all be white, and I'm thinking of using the red box light cavalry unit as a base, because I'm thinking of every sculpt wearing robes with the idea that they are armored underneath, but changing the heads of his unit with helmets of various kinds, while giving Kwak Che U a government official's hat. I think it would look too weird if he was the only one not wearing outside armor, and I imagine in the chaos of fighting, it'd be far harder to differentiate between hats and helmets, so the deception would play out well, in conjunction with masses of red robes. I could convert the models to have outside armor, but it would make them look less unique compared to the rest of the army. I think making them mounted archers is a good idea. The Chosun Koreans loved bows, and I want to show that visually. Aggressive horse archers could be a difficult concept, so maybe some of them are wielding spears. This unit will be Kwak Che U's volunteer army. I think the unit after that will be the artillery unit. So Hwacha. Hwacha are very iconic, so while I could depict other artillery, I'm not going to shy away from the core elements of the Chosun army's popularity. I could make cannons for so many other armies, and the Hwacha is an interesting and unique unit. It also fits well with the Korean love of archery. I'll probably put 2 units on a base and 4 crew each. I might have to convert some extra figures. I'm going to use the Wargames Atlantic Hwacha model and the small miniatures Hwacha model because I like model variety. I think it's hard to vary artillery poses, and I'm happy with the conventional depiction of crewmen just firing their ordnance. Then I will create a unit of regular foot. The front row will be using the iconic round dragon-faced Chosun shields. I want my regular foot to look armored and frontline, so I want to give them heavy, imposing armors, and this matches with the ethos of my other existing regular foot unit. I think the front rankers will be a mix of plate with mail, lamellar, and brigandine. Supporting them will be spearmen, and I'm depicting the moment that after the handgunners fire, the spearmen step up and take their place in the formation. So the spearmen will be Wargames Atlantic models, I think, wearing a mix of chainmail and paper armor. I want a commander figure in the front rank, and there are a few options. I've decided that this army just won't have banners, and that's the contrast with my other Imjin war armies. Historically, of course, they did use banners, but I'm depicting a righteous army which is a Korean phenomenon, and the informal nature of such a force means I think I can justify not using banners, because the formal command structure is broken down, so these guys are just winging it. So the command element won't have a banner. I did think of painting a patterned brigandine, but those appear to be for late Chosun, so I'm going to save that depiction for that army. Gumsu has had art depicting Admiral Yi Sun-shin in silver lamellar armor, and it looks great. But I also know about the historical general of Busan, named Chong Pai. He was nicknamed the Black General, and we can't say with certainty why, but general consensus is it's because he wore black armor. Now, what could black armor be? Was it black lacquered lamellar armor? Was it black paper armor? Probably not. Or was it black brigandine? I'm going with black brigandine because it's more unusual. But I like the silver lamellar as well, so I'm going to put both depictions in the front rank. The posing of this unit will be static and defensive. They're holding the shield wall, and the spearmen are poking their spears out from behind the protective barrier. There is a different way to do this. The whole unit could be running forward. But I think that this goes against the Korean tactical ethos for these weapon types and the overall theme of Koreans defending their country rather than attacking. And that would also mean that this unit can't line up with my other frontline unit visually. So it makes sense for both units to be posed defensively. My last unit of light cavalry will probably look standard. My conception of what light cavalry in a mid-Chosun army should be has changed over time. When I was first doing research, I thought I'd give them chainmail, mostly because that's a lower grade of lighter armor. But over time, I've reassessed that idea. I now think cavalry are essentially the army's elite. Even the lightest cavalry would probably have access to brigandine, and they just wouldn't have to wear lower grade armors like paper armor generally. So now I think a baseline model for my cavalry units in this army will be brigandine. So the foundation for this unit will be Wargames Atlantic Brigandine Cavalry. I might take some figures from my existing Guard Cavalry unit to supplement this unit. I've considered converting a figure of the blue-robed god from Uprising, the movie on Netflix, which depicts Joseon during the Imjin War and post-Imjin War. I might do it because the movie was good and he contrasts with the red-robed general. So, you have the blue-robed guy and the red-robed guy. And my broader army uses a lot of blues and reds, so it fits in visually there as well. I don't particularly have any strong ideas of theming. They'll probably be just galloping. This unit will probably feature some mounted archers to stay true to the Joseon love of archery. The final unit of crossbowmen, which I'm representing as archers, will probably be just standard archers firing from atop a hill. I want to depict the use of the baby arrow, which was an element particular to Joseon, so I'll probably have to convert some arrows and arrow tubes. I want to have some figures in the front ranks with Pavis style shields, maybe a figure resting a Pavis and a spear. Wargames Atlantic Pavis style shields look great, and I want to use the models. Maybe another figure is firing their bow from behind a shield. I'm thinking the unit leader could be wearing lamellar armor to contrast with my other units, or maybe plate with mail. Now, for some of my units, I have peasants mixed in with regular soldiers because I'm depicting a righteous army, which was a militia made of concerned citizens who wanted the Japanese to get off their lawn. The other units I still have to make don't really justify peasants in their ranks because they're too elite, but archers certainly can. However, I am thinking maybe to differentiate this unit as a crossbow unit on the tabletop with higher stats, I can just avoid peasants in this unit. I do kind of want a monk figure in the front ranks just because I like warrior monks, so I'll have to source that from somewhere. They'd have a very static defensive theme, just firing away. If I rework my guard cavalry unit, that would be the penultimate unit of my army, the strongest, most elite unit in the whole force. Enough for do my power. Now, even planning to paint all the details on this unit is giving me brain damage, but the amount of time you spend on a unit is proportional to how good it turns out. And I want the final boss to look good, so it's time to lock in and be stressed. I would have the Joseon King figure from Wargames Atlantic leading it. Fantastic model. I would have to convert a back flap from the Joseon lamellar cavalry onto it for historical accuracy though. His two bodyguards are called the Pyeol-un Kom, which translates to cloud-splitting swords, and they are the most elite soldiers in the country, and they always stand to the king's left and right. The Pyeol-un Kom both wield Pyeol-un Kom, the cloud-splitting swords, as a mark of their office, which also share the same name as their title. Now, unless Wargames Atlantic makes them, I'll have to convert them, which wouldn't be too hard. I'll probably give them plate with mail and Nodachi from a samurai set somewhere. The final figure would be my dual sword-wielding mounted figure on my existing guard cavalry unit, because the Koreans were known to dual-wield swords on horseback, and that is very cool. Historically, the Joseon King never rode out to confront the Japanese invaders. He ran away, actually, to the Ming. But this depiction would be historically plausible, and that's what matters to me. I want my centerpiece model to be as mega as possible, not to be some guy who's scared. And I think these figures arrayed in a warlike charge would be awe-inspiring on the tabletop. I always think that leader units embody and define the main themes of an army in their strongest form. So the king and his unit has to be an expression of that. So there you go. That's the outline and roadmap for my mid-Joseon army. Maybe this will inspire you for your own Joseon army and give you some ideas. Now go stunt on those hoes. Now we're at the end of another excellent Joseon video. So I'd like to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters, The Command Bunker and Mikhail Belusov, both of which are Imjin War enjoyers and great supporters of this channel. Thank you very much for the support. Alright friends, so that's the broad army outline for the mid-Joseon army. Now it is subject to change at some point, maybe. It's not set in stone. Perhaps I might come up with new ideas. But I think what I've covered is the essential elements of how I see each unit. And I think that planning can be very important and helpful for ensuring the cohesive identity and aesthetics of a future army together. So yeah, maybe that was useful. I mean, the internet doesn't have much mid-Chosun army content, so every little bit helps, right?